Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're unpacking a really fascinating piece of research, and honestly, it completely flips everything we thought we knew about workplace ethics. Picture a toxic, corrupt work environment. Your very first instinct to fix it? Probably to bring in a good, highly ethical boss, right? Well, surprising new data suggests that doing exactly that might actually destroy your employees' motivation even faster. Let's get right into it.
Can an ethical leader actually make a corrupt workplace worse? I know, it sounds completely backwards, but this paradox is exactly what a massive new study set out to answer. We're going to look at the data, the psychology behind it, and the frankly surprising truth about what happens when good leaders get dropped into bad systems.
To find our answer, we have to look at country number 107 out of 180 on the Global Corruption Perceptions Index. That's Thailand. To really understand how corruption impacts workers, researcher Wisanupong Potipiroon did an incredibly deep dive. We're talking about surveying nearly 5,000 public sector employees across 69 central government agencies in Thailand. So we aren't just talking about a few disgruntled workers here. This is a comprehensive, on-the-ground look at the front lines of government service. To understand why a good boss might actually make things worse, we first have to understand the minds of the people working in these agencies.
Section 1. The motivation to serve.
Okay, so a massive piece of this puzzle is something called public service motivation, or PSM for short. This is defined as an individual's predisposition to respond to motives grounded in public institutions, driven by a desire to serve the public interest. Basically, people with high PSM aren't taking government jobs to get rich. They're driven by a real moral calling to help society. And historically, the research tells us these folks are naturally way less likely to engage in unethical behavior or, normalize corruption. These are the good guys.
And in Thailand, this calling is deeply embedded in the culture. It's captured perfectly by the phrase Rakchat Satsana Pramahakasat, which translates to love of nation, religion, and monarchy. This isn't just some catchy slogan. It's a really profound cultural expectation that basically turns civil servants into moral custodians. Their baseline for ethical behavior is incredibly high before they even step foot in the office on day one. But what happens when these highly motivated, ethically driven employees hit the reality of a flawed system?
Section 2. Two faces of corruption. The crucial point here is understanding how these two faces of corruption actually operate. On one hand, we've got petty corruption. These are your everyday, low-level abuses. Think small bribes to speed up a permit or cut through red tape. It's super frustrating because it directly ruins daily service delivery for regular citizens. But on the other hand, there's grand corruption. This is the big stuff: embezzlement, massive kickbacks, high-level officials systemically rigging policies. While petty corruption is kind of an annoying roadblock, grand corruption is like a heavy blanket. It creates this overwhelming feeling of systemic hopelessness for the workers at the bottom.
To really put this into perspective, the study highlights the infamous 2009 District Chief Examination fraud scandal in Thailand. Just imagine studying your entire life to serve your country, only to realize that influential positions are simply being bought rather than earned. This kind of grand corruption totally shatters the illusion of a meritocracy. It deeply demoralizes workers who suddenly realize, wow, the entire system is rigged against me, no matter how hard I work. I want you to imagine the psychological shock of walking into this reality. You've got a heart full of public service motivation, and bam, you slam headfirst into a brick wall of bribery and fraud.
Section 3. The expectancy violation. This massive clash triggers what psychologists call expectancy violations theory, or EVT. It's a psychological reaction triggered when reality deviates negatively from preconceived expectations, causing moral dissonance. In plain English, it's the shock and frustration of discovering that things just aren't the way they're supposed to be. For our public servants, this constant, unresolved tension between their high moral ideals and the really dirty reality of their workplace acts kind of like a parasite. It drains their cognitive energy. It causes severe moral dissonance. And over time, it just replaces all that initial motivation with pure, unadulterated cynicism. Okay, so let's dive into the twist we promised at the start. If you have a corrupt system draining your employees, how do you fix it? Well, the obvious answer seems to be you just hire an ethical leader, right? Put a good boss in charge. Let's see what actually happens.
Section 4. The leadership paradox. Traditionally, Thai ethical leadership rests on three main pillars. A great leader is supposed to embody Krong Ton, mastering themselves with high personal integrity. They should practice Krong Kon, mastering people by leading fairly and with respect. And finally, Krong Gon, mastering the work itself ethically. Now, you would think that putting a boss who preaches these amazing values into a corrupt office would inspire everyone, right? Like they'd act as a moral compass. But as it turns out, the data reveals a massive catch.
And here is our aha moment. It all comes down to moral inconsistency. This is when a leader's moral ideation, so talking a big game about ethics, diverges from their moral execution, meaning actually acting ethically and fighting the bad stuff. Just think about it. If your boss constantly preaches integrity and fairness, but then completely ignores the bribery happening right down the hall, what are you going to think of them? They don't look like a savior. They look like a massive hypocrite.
The data reveals what researchers call a reverse buffering effect. If you look at this interaction plot, the motivation of employees under highly ethical leaders, that's the dotted line right there, actually plummets faster and steeper as corruption increases. Why? Well, because the hypocrisy of a leader who talks about ethics but does absolutely nothing to stop the corruption creates an even bigger expectancy violation. It's actually more demoralizing than working for a boss who makes absolutely no secret of being corrupt, because at least with the corrupt boss, you get exactly what you expect. It is a stunning finding. So, what do we actually do with this information? Let's move to our practical takeaways for any organization.
Section 5. Realistic expectations.
So, what are the crucial takeaways for us? First, leaders absolutely must walk the walk. If you're going to preach ethics, you have to actively confront corruption. Silence and passive inaction will completely destroy your moral authority. Second and third, organizations need to use realistic socialization during recruitment. Stop selling a total fantasy to new hires. We have to prepare new entrants for authentic ethical complexities right from day one, so you don't set up these false expectations that are just inevitably going to be shattered.
Which leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. If an ethical leader refuses to fight the system, are they really an ethical leader at all? It's something every manager, employee, and citizen needs to rethink. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking the tough questions, and I'll see you next time.